Speaking of which, we spoke about how things are from the client perspective, but if we switch gears a little bit and we look at it from an internal company perspective, a lot of these regulations are also creating, data control accesses. So
Yeah.
it's difficult for for different teams to have access to the same kind of information, and that is an inherent blocker when different teams have the same goal in mind and they're trying to offer the best possible experience, but they don't read from the same database, they don't have access to the same information about customers. And there's a number of those different teams in a fintech, like
Yeah.
FinOps, fraud teams, compliance, KYC teams, support teams, like all of those need access to that information. And then at the core of all of that, you have the user experience that cuts through all different uh, teams, um, but they don't necessarily care. Like the users don't care, the clients don't care
Yeah.
if your teams have to be siloed in a way. So how do you design for that? How do you create a better customer journey that does not have those friction points that your teams have to go through?
Yeah, and this is an excellent question because I guarantee you there's no company that does not face this problem. And the reason why this problem exists in the first place is that hindsight is 2020. You start with a product, you start adding more features and capabilities on it, you realize you have to collect more data for it, you realize you have to do XYZ more for it, you want to do some additional, add some more bells and whistles from a fraud and compliance perspective. And that creates a patchwork that is under the surface. It should be invisible to the end user or the customer, but internally the company is suffering. I can give you the example at remote right now, right? That you have what myself as the payments team, we want to see, payments data, number of payments we processed, money we processed, but also number of disputes. How often did we have reverse money movements and so on and so forth. Similarly, the fraud team wants to keep track of disputes because that's an indication that something went wrong with the platform and the checks. The KYC team wants to make sure that whoever we're checking does not lead to many disputes or whatever it may be, right? And then you have the customer support team that needs to have access to dispute data. If someone calls them and says, hey, by the way, my payment failed or this happened, how do I access this information? So you have so many teams that might try to access the same kind of information, but because of the controls you have in place, from PII data that not everybody can see, to data that is not relevant to everybody, it's just a patchwork that more often than not creates a very kind of manual process to pull data and extract data that you want, while of course adhering to the regulation and making sure you safeguard data, that you're not exposing PII data to anybody that does not have to see it. And the sad truth there is that this patchwork is inevitable unless you plan from it from the beginning, right? And that's really where the importance of when you design a product, try to make it as flexible as possible. And it's very important when it comes to payment related products to work with folks and hire folks that have done this before, and know the pitfalls and the usual mistakes that come with growing a product that has to touch money and has to do payments. Now, if you design a system in a correct way, so you know what data you're collecting from the end user, how you're masking PII, how you're extracting data for different teams, and how you're augmenting data with what you have from public databases, then it's a much smoother journey, not just for the end user, but also for the internal teams. But this really needs a lot of high kind of level planning from the beginning. Otherwise, you're going to end with patchwork solutions that are just going to be detrimental to everybody involved. And there always comes a point that I've been with companies in the past that you have this patchwork. It works, it works, it works, and you never make any changes. And at some point, everything breaks, right? Either people cannot access the data they want, either the KYC database is down, and people cannot complete their journey, whatever it may be. It's always going to happen. At some point, the patchwork is going to fail. And that's really where very strong product design comes into play, to make sure that the end-to-end process from the data you collect to how the internal teams use them is a unified process with very clear owners, restrictions, data provisioning processes, and regulatory reporting processes. Because at the end of the day, you just want to be able to collect all relevant data, mask what is PII, and provision data to relevant teams that I want to see it. So the core of it sounds very easy and simple, but if you don't build it the right way, it can get quite cumbersome for everybody involved. And to your point, at the end of the day, this is detrimental to the end user, the customer experience. And if the customer experience is bad and the end user is not happy, then that, of course, is going to have a pretty negative effect on a company.
Yeah. So it's basically a patchwork that works until it doesn't work. And at that breaking
Exactly.
point is when you, right. So if you haven't thought about this earlier on, is there any way to come back from it in terms of instead of creating this like Frankenstein process of customer journey of patchwork of new add-on features or processes that don't really communicate with each other? Is there any way back from that if you haven't done that from the
Yeah,
get-go?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's always about the other element that comes with the patchwork that I forgot to mention before, is teams trying to do a little bit too much. At some point, you have to know what it is that you're optimizing for on your platform and your products. It's very often the case that younger fintechs, especially, want to try a lot of different products to see what sticks in the market, right? But the more products you add, the more features you add, the more complex the infrastructure gets. At some point, you have to, if the patchwork becomes too big, you got to see what you can cut. What are you trying to optimize for with this product? And kind of identify what the extra fat is, and then start trimming that. So basically making it a little bit more of a more manageable patchwork, so that you don't have to manage 50 different applications, but just maybe 10. So identifying what you're optimizing for really, and making sure that you don't have basically low usage features that are high impact on internal teams when it comes to how they manage the data, is really the way to go there.
So focus on the core experience and make sure that you
Exactly.
do that right. Got it.
You got to do the
Great.
core things right, and that's pretty much it.
Great. Thank you so much for your time and insights today, Nico. I really appreciate your comments about localization, KYC best practices, and then the user experience. I think this gives our audience some really good food for thought. Thank you very much.
Pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for your time as well.
Thank you. If you guys want to learn more about fintech, check out our other Fireside chats and download the ebook. And I'll see you on the next one.
And that concludes the CX Talks FinTech Virtual Fireside Chat with our guest, Nikos Theodorou. We hope you learned new insights that could help you overcome the new challenges in the fintech industry so you can be more future ready. Thank you for joining us, and please visit the CX Talks FinTech website to watch other discussions and read our companion ebook, Rethinking FinTech Customer Experiences. This has been Alex C. See you at the next CX Talks.